As we pursue this bright future, we must hold accountable the nation which unleashed this plague onto the world, China. In the earliest days of the virus, China locked down travel domestically while allowing flights to leave China and infect the world. China condemned my travel ban on their country, even as they canceled domestic flights and locked citizens in their homes. The Chinese government and the World Health Organization, which is virtually controlled by China, falsely declared that there was no evidence of human-to-human transmission. Later, they falsely said people without symptoms would not spread the disease. The United Nations must hold China accountable for their actions.
When the only constant in life is change, you need to be ready. This is the Man-Made Survival Show.
Hello everyone, my name is Jose Prado with Man-Made Survival. Thank you so much for coming back to the channel and watching this video. I greatly appreciate it because today we're going to be talking about a very important subject, as I always bring you the important information that I believe that you should know about and that you should be keeping track of, because that's going to make, a big difference in the long-term future. Because if we know the plans that are going on right now, we can prepare for those things, and then we can be prepared for when those things actually happen. So that's the purpose of all of this, of course. And before I continue, I want to encourage you to share this information with your friends and family. Please share this podcast in your social media, whatever that you may be using. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment. I always answer everybody, or at least I try to. I do want to apologize to the people who have left plenty of comments that I haven't been able to answer until today, because I've been pretty busy. One of the things I want to share is that the whole virtual learning for the kids is really kicking my butt. So, I've been spending a lot of time with that, and it's not just, the one child, but several children. So, doing each one individually is really, really tiring. So, that's just the little FYI, I guess, for the people who's starting to know me a little more personally through the channel and through this whole thing that we've been doing for a while now. So, again, I want to thank you for making this possible, for sharing this information, for subscribing to the channel, from buying things from the website, from store. Man-Made Survival store, and also from ordering the books. Even though those books are being given out for free, that gives that information and puts it out there, and is really helping this channel grow, this name grow, Man-Made Survival. And we want to take it to great things. We want to do great things with this, and we can only do it through you. So again, I thank you, and I encourage you to keep sharing this information with everyone. So today's podcast is really going to be one of three, because the way that I think, the way that I like to think when I'm doing this, when I'm preparing all the podcasts, when I'm looking into the information that I want to share with you, it's really long term. And the information, like, this is what we're seeing now, what's going to be the end game, or what's going to be the end result, and what we could do in between those two points, I guess. And we will be prepared for when the day comes, when there's a nuke going off somewhere, when there's an EMP, when there's an invasion, whether the economy collapses or not here in the next few months, years, or whatever it might be. Taking those steps now is going to help us get to that goal, and we're going to be better off then than we would be right now if it was to happen right now. So, of course, I want things to happen later rather than now, because that just gives us more time to prepare, physically, spiritually, and with emotionally as well, with our family, our friends, and everybody else. So that's why I hope everything happens later on rather than now. And of course, we always want to push that down the road, because we want to live a long, peaceful life, and we want our children and grandchildren to live a long, peaceful life as well. But human nature is as it is, and we might not. So that's why today is very important, because as I started this podcast, we started with President Trump pretty much addressing the UN, and even though I'm playing little clips of the whole 7-8 minute speech that he gave. I encourage you to go look at all the 3 speeches that I'm going to be showing you today, but it really goes to show how everything kind of makes sense from the way that he's talking about it, because since we have seen for weeks and months things progress the way they have, for him to be able to give this opportunity to address the UN and say what he feels like saying, which is something that I'm going to be connecting today. You know, I'm going to bring out the information as I see it to you, so, you know, you can compare notes with what you have seen and what you know that I don't know, or that I might know that you don't know. And that way we can have a better, bigger picture, and we can see things, you know, going out for a further time. So before I get into the podcast and, you know, giving you the videos and information that I have for you today, again, this is the first one of 3. I do want to remind you about our very first sponsor that we have is greenmedicineencyclopedia.com. Green Medicine Encyclopedia is a science-based encyclopedia providing research evidence for nutritional medicine and natural health therapies. We partner with Green Medicine Works to bring you the best medical encyclopedia money can buy. In case you have a crap has hit the fan scenario or an incident when you require immediate medical attention, this encyclopedia is filled with cures and remedies for all kinds of ailments. When the supply chain stops and there's no more pharmacists or doctors, you'll be glad you bought your own copy of Green Medicine Encyclopedia. Men Survival Preppers get a special $40 discount with a coupon code MenMadeSurvival. Just click on the link that we provide at the store, menmadesurvivalstore.com. I want to remind you again real quick that you're not buying the encyclopedia from me. You have to look at the description and click the link that will take you to greenmedicineencyclopedia.com. And then, you know, you go through the process of purchasing it. You put on the coupon code, and then that's how you get the $4 off. And if you don't want to go through our store and go, you know, get the link, you can just go directly to greenmedicineencyclopedia.com and put in our code there as well. So it all works out the same. It's just, you know, I guess a way to direct people to that direction. But anyways, I want to go ahead and get into what I want to talk about today, because again, everything that Trump said and Xi Jinping and Putin said were very different things, but very important, and they kind of all focus in one point, and that is that one side is blaming the other, and one kind of wants to be the referee between the two in a way. You know, I mean, you can look into different ways that they said things, and you can read between the lines. But the point is that there was a constant theme of all of this, which was, of course, the coronavirus, the response to it, and people coming out on the other side that did talk about war and things like that, which is what we're going to be talking about today, which, of course, this is going to be centered around that because it's important. All right, so the first video that I'm going to be showing you today is Putin and his speech that he gave at the UN, or actually it was pre-recorded, but the point is that that's the one that was presented on there, and there's going to be several sections that I'm going to be playing, but this one in particular talks about the economy, the virus, but most importantly is how Russia and China with other countries in Europe, they're trying, or Putin is trying to put a team together of countries that will pretty much bypass the United States on everything that they do, because you know, everything that the United States does that is very powerful against other countries is putting on sanctions. And quite frankly, a lot of countries are tired of it because we have overplayed that hand many, many times. You know, and if we don't like anything that a country does, we just simply put sanctions on them. And of course, a lot of countries have become very resentful from that. And there are I've been warning for a while now, you know, since the beginning of this podcast back in January. I have said that they are working very hard to actually bypass the SWIFT system, trying to make the United States irrelevant, trying to go around the U.S. dollar being the reserve of the world. So if they are able to go past those two to where sanctions do not matter, and the United States dollar is no longer the reserve currency, then the United States loses pretty much all of its grip around the world. So it's very important for us to pay attention to this because it affects us, mostly because we live in the United States, we're citizens of the United States, and everything, and all the prosperity that we have seen in the United States, would be taken away just with those two simple things being taken away from us. So that's why it's important for you to pay attention to what he said and for where all of this is going. Because like I said, in the long term, this is going to affect us more than in the short term. So that's why I encourage you to pay attention to this very closely to what he said. Here's that video of Putin explaining everything that I just said.
Experts are yet to fully assess the scale of the social and economic outlook caused by the pandemic and all its long-term consequences. However, it is already evident that it will take a really, really long time to restore the global economy. Furthermore, even the proven anti-crisis measures will not always work. We will need new, innovative solutions. The only way to elaborate such solutions is to work together, which is the most important task for both the United Nations and G20 states, as well as other leading interstate organizations and integration associations that are also going through tough times due to the pandemic impact and need fundamentally new horizons and scope for development. This very idea of qualitative integrative growth, the integration of integrations, is the one behind Russia's initiative to form a greater Eurasian partnership involving all Asian and European countries without exception. It is purely pragmatic and increasingly relevant. Besides, I would like to draw attention once again to Russia's proposal to create so-called green corridors, free from trade wars and sanctions, primarily for essential goods, food, medicine, and personal protective equipment needed to fight the pandemic. In general, freeing the world trade from barriers, bans, restrictions, and illegitimate sanctions would be of great help in revitalizing global growth and reducing unemployment.
All right, so that was very clear from Putin, right? That the economy is going to take a long time for it to recover, globally. And the most important part of it, as I mentioned, is that they're going around the United States on trade because, he's pitching to the entire world, because this is Asia, this is the Europe nations, which, include NATO. So what would happen to NATO on that? And other allies that they have. So if he is successful in actually kicking this off and taking it to where nations will listen to Russia as opposed to the United States, because they're going to use the sanctions as a way to make them see, right, that we're the ones that are pretty much preventing them from actually getting beyond this pandemic, recovering from what the damage of COVID-19 has done. So we have to pay attention to that, and we have to see where it goes. Because if you remember what I've said in the past about NATO pretty much falling apart, it seems like it's going to that direction because nations right now, there's nations within NATO that are pretty much about to go to war with each other. And what happens then? And, how far will NATO split? So it's really important for us to pay attention to that because the United States has used NATO as its, strong arm against Russia, and now they want to use it against China. But if the United States no longer has that tool to its disposal, then what happens, But anyways, I guess we'll see. Now, the next hand that I have for you is from Zero Hedge, and it kind of puts a stronger foundation to what I've been saying and what Putin is saying. China and Russia to kick off joint military exercises in Caucasus as ties deepen. As I mentioned this from Zero Hedge. It's been no secret that over the past 2 years, the tumultuous and historically antagonistic relationship between Russia and China has warmed, with President Putin and Xi enjoying a rapid thawing of tensions amid mutual visits over the years in common cause aimed at the mutual enemy of Washington and its sanctions. This has been accompanied by a corresponding positive military-to-military relationship as well, something that would have been unheard of throughout much of the 20th century. And now, the two major powers are set to kick off a Caucus 2020 joint war games in southern Russia, which will run in late September. The ongoing military cooperation among the countries is continued outgrowth of Beijing and Moscow's comprehensive strategic partnership 2 decades ago, which the U.S. has kept a close and worrisome eye on. And that is an important piece of information because, like the article mentions, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. And they have actually come together. They have put resources together. I'm sure they're sharing intelligence with each other. And if you remember in the previous podcast that I've shared with you, is that they do have those plans. That's defectors have come out and say they do have the plans, Russia and China, of working together to one day defeat the United States in a nuclear war. They want to do the first punch against the United States, so we have no way for us to retaliate. All right, so it's important for us to pay attention to that because it looks like that those plans that have been from a very long time ago are starting to either come together or it's starting to become more clear what the end goal is going to be. All right, something that I wanna mention here is that the United States has kept a really close eye on this because they understand, right? The Pentagon and everybody else in the upper levels of the government, they understand what a Russia-China tag team would actually look like. And, we have run a lot of scenarios. We have run those simulations and all those things that we have at our disposal that will give us the outcome of a war against Russia, a war against China, and a war against both. And all three of them, very sadly, I report that we have lost. We have lost very big number of casualties. So it's something that the Pentagon has looked at for a very long time. Now, the next video that I have for you is Putin talking about the recent arms deals that pretty much have gone to crap and the one that's about to expire. But pay close attention to what he says about space weapons. All right, here it is.
The issue of primary importance that should and must be promptly dealt with is, of course, the extension of the Russia-US Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty, which will expire shortly in February 2021. We are engaged in negotiations with our US partners on the matter. We also expect that mutual restraint would be exercised with regard to deploying new missile systems. I would like to add that as early as last year, and I emphasize this, Russia declared a moratorium on deploying ground-launched medium and long-range missiles in Europe and other regions, as long as the United States of America also refrain from such actions. Unfortunately, we have not received any reaction to our proposal from either our US partners or their allies. I believe that such reciprocal steps on specific issues would provide a sound basis for launching a serious, profound dialogue on the entire range of factors affecting strategic stability. It would aim at achieving comprehensive arrangements, shaping a solid foundation for the international security architecture that would build on prior experience in this field and in line with both the existing and future political, military and technological realia. In particular, Russia is promoting an initiative to sign a binding agreement between all the leading space powers that would provide for the prohibition of the placement of weapons in outer space or the threat or use of force against outer space objects. We are well aware of the fact that security issues, as well as other problems discussed by this Jubilee UN General Assembly, call for consolidated efforts on the basis of values that unite us. Our shared memory of the lessons of history, and the spirit of alliance which guided the anti-Hitler coalition participants, who found it possible to rise above differences and ideological preferences for the sake of victory and peace for all nations on the earth. Dealt with is, of course, the extension of the Russia-US Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty, which will expire shortly in February 2021. We are engaged in negotiations with our US partners on the matter. We also expect that mutual restraint would be exercised with regard to deploying new missile systems. I would like to add that as early as last year, and I emphasize this, Russia declared a moratorium on deploying ground-launched medium and long-range missiles in Europe and other regions, as long as the United States of America also refrained from such actions. Unfortunately, we have not received any reaction to our proposal from either our US partners or their allies. I believe that such reciprocal steps on specific issues would provide a sound basis for launching a serious, profound dialogue on the entire range of factors affecting strategic stability. It would aim at achieving comprehensive arrangements, shaping a solid foundation for the international security architecture that would build on prior experience in this field and in line with both the existing and future political, military, and technological realia. In particular, Russia is promoting an initiative to sign a binding agreement between all the leading space powers that would provide for the prohibition of the placement of weapons in outer space or the threat or use of force against outer space objects. We are well aware of the fact that security issues, as well.
All right, so another important point in this UN meeting, because we're talking about space weapons. You know, we have heard in the past of, you know, there's people out there, channels out there that have talked about that there are space-based energy weapons that are pretty much being used right now. And what Putin is saying is that we should come together to prohibit that, so we don't use that against each other, because, you know, then that would just mean that there would be weapons going around the planet 24/7, you know, going over whatever nation many times a day, and that could pose a very big risk. And I don't know if that's what he's trying to avoid, if he just, you know, saying one thing but he actually means that he's gonna put them up themselves. You know, who knows? Because of course those are all top secret weapons and plans and everything. But the point is that he's trying to make a proactive move to pretty much avoid that, especially since very recently we have come out and said that we have, you know, the new, Star Wars, you know, arm of the military now for space. So the point is that they're taking those steps, and Putin is calling out the United States, saying that they want peace. And it would be irresponsible for the United States to say that we don't want peace. And if there was a war to break out, Russia could actually point out and say, we have tried time after time, as we have told the United Nations, and we have pretty much told the entire world, we are willing to you know, reduce the nuclear weapons, but the United States is just not willing to. So since they want to keep theirs, we have to keep ours, and we have to prepare for the day there's a nuclear war. All right, so they can play the victim on this one. All right, another thing that I can point out and I can say is that the reason that one of the reasons that I think Putin would say that they don't want space weapons up there or anything or any infrastructure that's up there, because there's military satellites. As we know, the United States loves their satellites. It's a very important key component of the military, because that's the way that we actually communicate from the United States, from the Pentagon to our troops all around the world. It's through satellites. So if we do that, and if we get our satellites knocked out, it would be, you know, very hard for us to actually come back from that, it would also be hard for China, for Russia to come back. You know, they would pretty much become blind if they get their satellites knocked out of the air or knocked out of space. You know, so maybe that's the reason why he wants that. The point is that all of those issues were brought up in the United Nations. Pretty much, they put it out there for the entire world to listen and say, we want peace. Now the ball is in the United States court. You know, one has expired, the other one is going to expire in February. We have actually sent letters, we have sent delegation, whatever, and they just have not come back and either, you know, not met with us or not actually responding to anything we said. So we have to assume they want war. So, you know, we see Russia and China coming together and preparing for said war that might happen eventually in the future. They're going to have those war games in Russia this time, because last time, if I'm not mistaken, it was 2018 that they happened in China. So that relationship is there, and they just continue to grow that relationship. So now the next video that I have for you is actually Xi Jinping talking about you know, the coronavirus and them not wanting to go to war with the United States, and them not wanting to have a Cold War either. You know, pretty much they're saying that they don't want to have to continue fighting with the United States over the trading agreements and all those things. So that video, it's going to be pretty short. It's about a minute. So here's that video.
China is the largest developing country in the world, a country that is committed to peaceful, open, cooperative, and common development. We will never seek hegemony, expansion, or sphere of influence. We have no intention to fight either a Cold War or a hot one with any country. We will continue to narrow differences and resolve disputes with others through dialogue and negotiation. We will not seek to develop only ourselves or engage in zero-sum game. We will not pursue development behind closed doors. Rather, we aim to foster over time a new development paradigm with domestic circulations as the mainstay and domestic and international circulations reinforcing each other. This will create more space for China's economic development and add impetus to global economic recovery and growth. China will continue to work as a builder of global peace, a contributor to global development, and a defender of international law.
All right, so that's also a very important part that Xi Jinping said. You know, again, he's putting it out there in front of the entire world. You know, that was the moment for them to say what they wanted to, and they are playing the victim, saying that they're the ones that want the peace. They're the ones that don't want either a hot war nor a cold war, but they are going to uphold the international laws or whatever. You know, which that also can translate to what they would say about Taiwan and all these other places. So we have seen an escalation, right? This is where I'm going to tie things together, because now that we have the opportunity to listen to Xi Jinping, to listen to Putin, and here later on in the podcast, we're going to listen to Trump. Now, pay attention to how all three of them talk. All right, of course, I'm only playing you 2 to 3 minutes at a time. Putin's speech was about 14 minutes long. So was Xi Jinping, and Trump was only about 7 or 8 minutes. So I encourage you to go back and listen to the entire speech so you can get, you know, a better understanding of everything that they said, more than I can show you here because of time, of course, because if I play all of that just on those 3 speeches, it's over 30 minutes long. So that's why I had to cut it back to just a few minutes into the point that I want to make to you. But anyways, the point is that we have seen for the past several weeks, for the past several days, weeks, months, and now years, about Taiwan and Taiwan with relationship to the conflict between the United States and China. All right, but not only that, I also came out with some information that also explains further the reason that China has been aggressive, you know, showing military might when it comes to Taiwan and the islands that surround the South China Sea. All right, so I'm going to give you a few headlines, and then I'm going to get into the third one that's going to be pretty much the article. I'm going to read it and I'm going to come back. So the first one that I have is Taiwan military says it has the right to counter-attack amid China threats. This from Reuters. All right, so really quickly before going to the next headline, pretty much what happened and what has been happening really, because it's not the first time this happened, I've actually talked about it in the past, is that the United States is helping Taiwan keep their independence. China sees that as aggression, sees that as an insult, and they're saying that that could spark a war between the United States and China. And of course, it's something we don't want. But of course, the question has been put in the air is, when they actually, rubber meets the road, are we going to defend Taiwan against China? The United States is going to defend Taiwan. Some people have said, yes, we are. They're a key ally because of manufacturing and whatever. Others are saying no because, what are we really gonna gain? It might not even be worth the risk, so no way, right? So really it's up in the air, but everything the United States has done to this point points to the fact that they might help. If you remember in the past podcast that I've done in the past about this subject, we have one congressman saying that he wants to pass a bill that if China ever tries to do anything against Taiwan, it will be an automatic declaration of war against China and we will go to war. In other podcasts, I have also shown that the United States is selling Taiwan advanced military weaponry. And, that also angers China. But the way that China is actually responding to this is with military might, right? They're flying airplanes, they're having boats going by, they're actually, doing a bunch of stuff that would be provoking Taiwan to react. And just the past few weeks, when one of the top officials went to Taiwan, that really angry China. So what they did is this next headline from CNN. Almost 40 Chinese warplanes breached Taiwan Strait median line. Taiwan president calls it a threat of force. And the reason that they did that is, to show that they were angry, that the United States delegation went out there pretty much making Taiwan more legitimate in the world stage, because the United States has actually pushed for Taiwan to be part of the UN. And China is saying, no way, because they belong to us. They may not be under our control, but they belong to China. So they don't want that to happen. Now, the third headline that I have for you kind of explains even more what I've been talking about. And that kind of brings the picture a little more clear because, when you really think about it and you say, they just want Taiwan and the South China Sea, is that really a reason to go to nuclear war against them? But it looks like we're trying to spread our influence all throughout the islands that surround China for very many reasons. But I'm going to read this first and I'm going to come back with why I think the United States is taking this step. Here it is. South China Sea disputes spread to Mekong River amid fierce U.S. will dominate territory. This from the Express from the UK. U.S. officials announced a $150 million investment into a partnership with countries along the Mekong River, the longest river in Southeast Asia and stretching across multiple borders, including China's. Beijing's experts have reacted angrily to the announcement and accused the U.S. of attempting to politicize water resources to curb China's influence in the region. It is the latest flashpoint of tensions between Washington and Beijing, who have clashed over territories such as the South China Sea and Hong Kong. Mike Pompeo, U.S. Secretary of State, announced that the Mekong-U.S. coalition includes countries like Cambodia, Vietnam, Thailand, and Myanmar on Friday. The official said the U.S. will be working closely with Southeast Asia countries as the Mekong River is an integral part of our Indo-Pacific vision and our strategic relationship with the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. All right, so there you go. There's one reason, or that goes to show more plans of expansion from the United States that is really angry in China. All right, so one of the things that I have discussed with you in the past, if you've been here for a length of time, is that we as the United States is trying to look for places to place defense systems, nuclear bombs as well, that will be closer to China. Japan has rejected us, Australia has rejected us, and other places around the world because they fear a retaliation from China. So they're saying, no way, if war breaks out, we know we're going to be a target because we're going to be hosting your missiles. So no way, we don't want that. All right, so now the United States is having influence even closer to China through all these through all these islands and nations, bordering also China, which is something that we have seen the same thing happening with Russia. We have systems, we have weapons really close to the border with Russia, and Russia many times has warned and told us straight out that, for one, to stop doing it because they're seeing it as a threat, and two, if war breaks out, they know that they're going to be the very first ones to get blown up as another ICBM is coming towards the United States. All right, because since they're closer and they're going to be the likely targets or the likely missile silos that's going to be shooting something towards Russia, they're going to be obliterated first when they do a first strike against, the United States and all the NATO allies. So that's why it's important for us to pay attention to all of this. All right, and now I believe that because of this, that has triggered China into taking the next step that I'm going to be showing you. Here's the headline. China Air Force video appears to show simulated attack on U.S. base on Guam. This from Reuters. The video released on Saturday on the People's Liberation Army Air Force Weibo account came as China carried out a second day of drills near China-claimed Taiwan to express anger at the visit of the senior U.S. State Department official to Taipei. All right, so I'm going to be showing you the video here in just a second of, what they did. I'm pretty sure you've seen it by now. And if you haven't, I encourage you to go find the longer version, because pretty much what they do is, they do a dramatic presentation of airplanes going over Guam and pretty much bombing it. So before I continue any further, I want you to watch it. Here it is. All right, so all that aggression is starting to look more clear. I hope you see the way that I'm seeing it. Hopefully I'm presenting this properly to where I'm showing you everything that's been going on for the past few weeks, months, and in some cases years. And now that the top three nations have had the opportunity to pretty much present to the entire world and to the entire head of nations, they're pretty much their intentions. All right, we saw Putin. He's pretty much saying we want to help the world, we want to get over this coronavirus, we're gonna give free vaccinations to all the head of states and everybody who wants it. You want it, you get it, it's free. We want to help everybody. China saying, we're seeing ourselves with this problem, it's nobody's fault, we need to come together, and we don't want to war against the United States, but they're taking these aggressive actions. And then we come to the United States and Trump is like, what, screw everybody, it's your fault, and it's your fault, and F you, and F you too. So everything just pretty much goes to crap with that. But everything that I've shown you with Taiwan, with the United States pretty much doing an outreach with with Vietnam and all the other nations that I mentioned a minute ago, so we can put missile systems closer to their border, pretty much comes into focus, and it makes sense now. All right, and we can see that all this can project towards war. That's why it's important for us to pay attention to all of this and get prepared for it. All right, the next clip that I have for you is Trump pretty much talking about the military. And it's very important that he did that. But I'm going to show you the video first, and I'm going to be talking about it. Here it is.
We also know that American prosperity is the bedrock of freedom and security all over the world. In 3 short years, we built the greatest economy in history, and we are quickly doing it again. Our military has increased substantially in size. We spent $2.5 trillion over the last 4 years on our military. We have the most powerful military anywhere in the world, and it's not even close. We stood up to decades of China's trade abuses. We revitalized the NATO alliance, where other countries are now paying a much more fair share.
All right, so I pretty much had to cut it right there because he was talking very fast. So if it sounds kind of weird, then you know why. So again, I encourage you to go and listen to the whole video or the whole presentation or speech that he gave about all of this. But it's very clear what he's saying, right? He came out and put the military on front, and he told everyone how much we have spent over the past 4 years. You know, a whopping $2.5 trillion on our military. That's by far how much any military has spent in a very, very long time. You know, I didn't think about doing this when I put this together, but I'm sure that if we were to compare just the past 4 years with the $2.5 trillion compared to all the other militaries or just Russia and China as a whole, how much they have spent, we probably have outspent them by far. And again, that is a two-edged sword. Yes, it does make our military better. It gives us better weapons and upgrades everything. You know, our carriers have better missiles and all of that. And I understand it's necessary. Yes, we have very many enemies. But two, the other side of this is that it's just putting us even deeper in the debt. All right, how much more are we willing to go into debt in order for us to keep this empire going? You know, and spending them this much money eventually is going to stop. You know, so I guess we'll see what happens then. But this is a two-edged sword. But bringing it back to the point that I'm making with all of this is that since Russia and China have been doing or are about to be doing military exercises, China has been aggressive in the South China Sea and near Taiwan. You know, they have shown the video of them bombing Guam. Of course, President Trump is going to come in and say, you know, pretty much start measuring sticks and see who's bigger. And he is saying, we have spent this much money. Our military is better than yours by far. And if you keep provoking us, we're just going to club you over the head. All right. So we have to really pay attention to all of this. Now, the last headline that I have for you is this headline. I encourage you to really go look at the entire article because it was a really long article. And I just got the very important parts that I thought that I needed to share with you today. All right, so here's the headline. The Daily 202, U.S. came much closer to war with North Korea in 2017 than the public knew. Trump told Woodward. This from the WashingtonPost.com. Jim Mattis slept in his gym clothes when he was President Trump's Secretary of Defense so that he could more quickly join a top-secret conference call whenever he received an alert that a North Korean missile had been launched or was at the launch pad. A flashing light was installed in his home bathroom so he would know immediately if such an alert came while he was showering. A bell would also ring in the bedroom and kitchen. In one on 17 on the record interviews for the book, Trump told Woodward that war with Pyongyang was much closer than anyone would know. The president argued that the conflict was averted because of his flattering letters to and 3 face-to-face meetings with the 30-something totalitarian leader. Trump said King was totally prepared for war and he expected to go, the president said, but we met. Mattis did not think Trump would order a preemptive strike on North Korea, but Woodward reports that plans for decapitation strikes were dusted off and ready to go. The Strategic Command on Omaha had carefully reviewed and studied Open 5027 for regime change in North Korea. The U.S. response to an attack that could include the use of 80 nuclear weapons, he reported. A plan for a leadership strike, Open 5015, had also been updated. A communications room was set up in Mattis' residence on Potomac Hill in Washington, and military aides built security compartments in tent-like structures whenever he traveled, at home or abroad. An SUV with a communications team always joined his motorcade. With their equipment, Mattis could see a geospatial map with an icon that tracked the North Korean missile anticipated flight path. All right, so that is extremely important for you to understand. We were very, very close to go to war against North Korea, but not only that, we were going to use 80 nukes. All right, 80 nukes is it's a number of nukes that we would never think that we would use that many. We freak out over one nuke going over one United States city. What about 80 nukes going off in the United States? How will we feel about that? And it's a possibility. If we have those kind of plans, now that it's out there, that we would use 80 nuclear weapons against North Korea, think about it. Back in those days when we were talking about North Korea, we were pretty much making fun that we would just blow them off the face of the earth. And, it's not an exaggeration anymore. But we were relaxed in the United States saying, if we go to war, it's just going to be blasted off and nothing's going to happen to us. Everything's going to be okay. I didn't put this in this podcast, but the article did say that Jim Mattis, for a long time, when all of this was going on with North Korea, he had that gut-wrenching feeling that he did not want to do this. That he understood that if nuclear weapons were to be used, millions of people would die very quickly. And not only that North Korea has the capability of being able to reach the United States with an ICBM that will hit anywhere in the West Coast. And he pretty much said Seattle. Maybe their intelligence said that they would hit Seattle. But the point is that it was no fun thing for him to think about. And if we're thinking about the North Korea being, quote unquote, not a very technologically advanced country, we are ready to go to those extremes. What we would do in a war against China and against Russia? How many nukes would they use on us? If we are willing to use against a small country, on a not very advanced country as North Korea, how many nukes are we willing to use against Russia? How many nukes are we willing to use against China? And how many nukes are they willing to use against us? So it is no longer a work of fiction, right? Or it's not too far out there thinking that more than one United States city would be blown to smithereens if we would go to war against any of those two nations. All right, we have LA, we have Seattle, we have Miami, we have Texas, we have Atlanta, we have New York, Chicago. We have a lot of major cities. Would they use 80 nukes against us? And, not to mention Washington, D.C. So I hope you understand that aspect of all of this, because that's the most important part of all of this. I hope you stayed all the way through the end and you got this last piece of information, because to me, this last part that I shared with you was the most important part of all of this that I just shared. This entire podcast that you listened to. Now, the preparedness part of this, I want to focus on the last section that I read to you, which was the communications. This is how important the communications is for the military. That's how important communication should be to you. A communications room was set up in Matt's residence in Potomac Hill in Washington. And military aides built secure compartments in tent-like structures whenever he traveled at home or abroad. An SUV with the communications team always joined his motorcade. That's how important communications is to the country, to the military. That's how important communication should be to you. Remember, if we go to war against Russia or China, or they try to do a surprise attack on us, they're going to take out the grid and they're going to take out the communications. And that's the very first step you do in a surprise attack. Because once you do that, for one, you're going to be disoriented, as citizens, and two, you won't be able to communicate. It's going to be pretty much pandemonium in the streets once they see that nothing works anymore. So that's why I encourage you to make sure that in your preparedness, you take care of the communications. Now, communications is pretty much breaks down into two different parts. One is going to be local communication that you can do in your property, and two is going to be the long range. You can get either walkie-talkies, CB radio, or ham radio. The walkie-talkies, we are very familiar with. Everybody has one of those. And depending on how big your property is, you can use those. The antennas work with line of sight, if I said that correctly. Line of sight, I think. And if you have 5 acres, it'll be okay, because that's what I use in my property. But as Citizens Band radio, which is the CB radio, that goes a little bit further, maybe a mile, maybe 3 at the most, depending on how much power you're putting out. But the most important one is the ham radio. And the reason you want the ham radio, as I've shared with you in the past, is because you want to get information of what is being communicated outside the United States, on what's happening in the United States. Because somebody in Australia, somebody in Mexico, somebody in Canada, if they still have their grid going and they're using their ham radio, and we no longer have the grid, then we can just communicate with them and ask what's going on, what's been reported in your country, I'm in this area, what's going on around this area, and they'll be able to give you the intel that you're gonna need in order for you to make proper, reaction. You're gonna be able to reaction plan. You're gonna be able to put a reaction plan together with that type of information. So that's why I encourage you to make sure that your communications take priority in your preparedness, because I have put out a list in the past that I've talked about. You need your food, your water, you need your medicine, you need to learn first aid, you need your guns, your ammo, but also you need communications. And communications is going to be one of the very basic fundamentals of your preparedness. So I encourage you to go and find out what you need in order for you to have the ham radio, because you can buy it, but you have to be licensed. And not only that, there's a learning curve that everything has in life, and that's no exception. So I encourage you to learn that. Get the handbooks. You can go to any bookstore, you can go to any preparedness website and find them. You can go on the web, find them. You can even ask your local government, because you got to be licensed. They'll give you the right material for you to study, and you'll be able to get your license. All right, but remember, if they catch you broadcasting without the license, then you can get very hefty fines that it's in the thousands of dollars. It's kind of crazy, but that's how the rules are. So again, I encourage you to prepare. I encourage you to get all this information that I shared with you today. I know this video already ran over an hour, but I believe all this is very important. And I thank you again for staying all the way to the end and listening to all this that I had to say. Before I let you go, I do want to remind you about the sponsor that we have. Is greenmedicineencyclopedia.com. You can go to their website and purchase their encyclopedia. You can download and print out anything on that encyclopedia, and they have a video on there that's going to explain everything in greater detail. Remember to use the Amendment Survival code so you can get $40 off. Or you can also go to the amendmentsurvivalstore.com and you can find the link on there so you can take you to their website and you can order it from there. And also want to remind you about the book that I'm giving away for free. It's Preppers Secrete Cache. You can go to www.prepperssecretcache.com and you can order it from there. Again, the book is free. All we need your help is with shipping. And the way that I did this book is that it's pretty much an introduction to people, right? When I started this whole Amendment Survival company, project, whatever you want to call it, I did the book that way to an introduction to people that will listen to me. And now I'm working on a second book, which is one of the reasons I've been so busy, that it's going to go into a lot of detail in preparedness on the 4 scenarios that I'm preparing for actively. And I go into great detail in a lot of things. So I'm still working on that. I just started it here in the past few weeks, but once I'm done with it, that's going to go into great detail. It's not going to be, a generalization of something. It's going to be in a specific thing. It's going to say, this is why you need this, this is how you can get it, and this is how you're going to apply it for this situation. All right, so that's the way that I'm working on that book, and that's going to be available hopefully soon, here in the next few months. You know, right now I'm working on it as I have free time, or I make free time for it. But the point is that I'm actively working on it because I feel like this information needs to get out there for people to understand what's going on and how to prepare for it, because we are going to that direction. All right, so again, subscribe to the channel, share this with your friends and family, and leave your comment and let me know what you thought about this video. You know, I'm very encouraged by all the positive feedback that I get from everyone, and I thank you. But I'm gonna leave you with that. Remember, my name is Jose Prado, always ready.
The Man-Made Survival Show.